Good morning, friends. This is about Quakers and my little history with Quakers, so it's kind of autobiographical. My most recent YouTube, I've been doing YouTubes about this School of Tomorrow, in case you've been watching those. I don't want to be too abrupt in my change of subject. Perhaps a good segue is one of the Quakers we grow up admiring was this captain in the Navy who was against the nuclear testing program, which was going to do atmospheric testing in the Marshall Islands, Bikini Atoll, and all that. And he and his little crew took off towards the Pacific in protest. I mean, from Hawaii directly into the testing zone. They were, of course, picked up by the Coast Guard. I tell this story elsewhere. That ship has been refurbished and is now called the Golden Rule, and it still gets crewed and goes around. And the crew came here one time. I've got blog posts about that. But what I really want to talk about more is the longer history here of the Quakers in Portland with the formal monthly meetings and all of that. And I go back far enough to the very beginning of that because my parents were Quakers already when they left Chicago. They'd been active in the 57th Street meeting, I think it was called, is still there, right? And they came here to Portland in the late 50s, and a nucleus of families like Pinney's, Martin's came together and they got this property, which I'm showing here. Now, this is the remodeled version where we expanded into the property adjacent and enlarged the building. This is the original structure, though, this part of it. This is the Stark Street Meeting House. I can show you now an older picture of it from my blog here, my journal. This is Electro Measurements Incorporated. So that is the same building from 53 to 58. Now, Doug Strain, who was the founder of Electro Measurements, he was a big fan of the American Friends Service Committee, which had offices in Portland. He wanted to make sure they always had offices in Portland. So part of why he gave this building to the Quakers after he moved to Bigger Digs for his factory, because it was a factory building when he got it from Jansen, right? It was Jansen Swimwear was making textiles there like swimsuits, and then Doug Strain got it to build electro measurement devices. And then it went on to, he moved on, and the Quakers took it over with AFSC there in the front office. And that's the situation where I show up. Our family comes, and that's already happened or happening, and we start going to meeting there. And it does have a factory-like atmosphere. It's got pipes, exposed pipes, and so on down. Since the two there have been at least two remodels since then, and the first one just made it look better and moved the meeting room upstairs, and the second one enlarged the building to the east by incorporating the property a house had stood on. That house was actually put on a truck and moved elsewhere, and then the meeting house, the building itself, was expanded. And you can see in my, let's see, this shot shows you the whole new part of the meeting house. This was not part of the original structure, what's behind the dumpster there. So now to finish how the story goes, our family, the Earners, left in the 60s. Dad had always wanted to work in developing countries, and when the chance came, he took it, and the family moved to Rome, and he commuted to Libya. And he worked in Egypt, he worked in Bangladesh, he had a long career as a planner, and my parents never did return to the United States. Well, my mother did after the accident in 2000. I brought her back. Well, my sister brought her back, and I met them in the Atlanta airport, having myself gone there earlier and then turned it over to my sister, it being my mother's care. My dad did not survive that accident. It was a head-on car collision in between Bloemfontein and Maseru, a dangerous stretch of road. Dad was an excellent driver, I can attest, but if the anyway, so when I came back to Portland in 1985, uh, I came to a new meeting house, new people and everything. Mostly the pennies were still there and so on, but the question was, were there too many of us? By then, there was a real population pressure on the meeting itself. We had a lot of people, and so they were looking around for new digs. Like, let's just find a bigger place. Maybe we can share it with another congregation. Lots of explorations went on for about a year, and then instead they decided. Well, they even looked at the Masonic property right across the street, actually, but the acoustics were kind of bad there. They ended up meeting there during the remodel, however. It was a good decision to stay put, but this venturesome spirit, let's go off and find another place, that had momentum to it. And one group called Bridge City Friends Meeting decided, hey, why don't we just go ahead and split off anyway? And that's what happened. The Bridge City Friends meeting found other digs they rented, and to this day we have two unprogrammed, as we call them, monthly meetings in Portland, Oregon. The monthly meetings go up to a higher level. In other words, at the quarterly level, we have Willamette quarterly meeting, and I'm looking for the Yahoo group page for that. We have a list serve that we don't use very much because we're mostly old guys who don't have a history of using this kind of stuff. I do, but that's because I'm an IT guy, so I push listservs wherever I go. Hey, we need a listserv, and everybody's like, in principle, that sounds like a good idea, but in practice, it's not what we do. But we did for some amount of time have a listserv. I guess it's not in this album. And after you get to the quarterly level, then there's the yearly level. Every time you go up a level, it's more encompassing geographically. Yearly meeting is kind of as high as it goes. I could talk more about FWCC, FCNL. Then there's AFSC, which I did work for here in Portland for a while, although not as a full-time staff person. I did have paid work some. Mostly, though, I clerked a very long-running youth-focused program, which I helped design. A lot of people had input. I was interested in media, getting people trained to use cameras and editing equipment and stuff. It was not as easy to come by those days either. People weren't just throwing up podcasts and YouTubes in those days. It was pretty much pre-internet. But then rolling forward, we kind of kept up to date. AFSC phased out its Portland programs, not being a rich nonprofit anymore. Kind of golden age gone by. Maybe there'll be another one someday. And what else do we have here? Let me type in Quakers. So Bridge City decided to split off anyway because of this population um, pressure, and I was kind of a member of Bridge City for a long time. Actually, it's another story here. I'll just tell it quickly. But I decided I wanted to see Quakers from the perspective of a non member. So, although I was a member and my parents had been members, I decided to resign membership but can maintain my level of commitment and also do a lot of things to show that we don't want any secrets. So, every position I think should in principle be open to non members because one's motivation for being a member, which is like being kind of like a cheerleader. Now, they say you're the first to go to jail, but I think a sufficiently active attender exposes themselves to risk under the law as much, really. Um, anyway, I did resign for reasons, but not because I was trying to break my ties with the Quakers. I just wanted to explore the religion from the point of view of someone who's officially no longer a member, but not out of protest or anything. So that was Another side story, I also promote Quakers are not Puritan in the sense of supportive of prohibition of this and that. It can be devastating for some people to take some drinks or substances, but the fewer rules, the better is kind of my attitude. Anyway, I think that's enough little bit of history there. I'm glad to share it with you, and there's more in writing elsewhere. Talk to you soon.